So I want to welcome you all to this live class. We're going to talk about how to keep a conversation going in English. As we all know, having a confident and engaging conversation in English can be a real challenge, even for those of us who are L1 native English speakers and speak the language fluently. But with 1.5 billion English speakers worldwide, these communication skills are incredibly valuable in our increasingly global world. So today I'm going to give you practical tools and techniques to help you maintain a fluid, natural conversation in professional and social settings, even when you feel stuck in English or unsure of communication. So let's get into it. All right, I'm going to share my screen so that we can talk more in detail about this. And you can always come and join us in Explearning Academy if you want more support, ongoing practice, and feedback from our communication coaches. All right, so let's first understand what kind of challenge you might be facing. So there might be vocabulary gaps where you have limited vocabulary, maybe few words, but you're still working on improving your vocabulary and you have all these complex thoughts, but you're not able to express them. This can create hesitation during those really important conversations and high stakes dialogue. Then there might be social anxiety, right? That stress that we might sense and feel in social situations, which then amplifies the language difficulties and exacerbates them. And so your brain is working now in overtime, trying to process these social cues plus the language. And then lastly, we might have this fear of making mistakes, which is not lost on me, right? A lot of people have this fear, including L1 native English speakers. And you know what? Perfectionism is sometimes to blame for this because it will create these mental blocks. Remember that 65% of language learners report conversation anxiety. So you are certainly not alone in this. 65% is a high percentage. Okay, so what are some of the strategies that we can get into? Number one, I want you to use open-ended questions. So start with how, why, what, right? What do you think about this and that? Not do you like X or Y, right? It's what do you think about this? When was the last time you learned this or went there, right? So open-ended questions, because these are going to encourage more detailed answers and you're going to get a robust answer, which is going to promote conversation, right? And it reduces pressure on you as well to respond immediately. So you might ask somebody, what's your favorite part of this city, right? What's your favorite thing to do on weekends? Do you have, what are some of your recommendations of places to visit, especially if you recently moved somewhere or just started a new job and you're in a new area? Those are great. Strategy number two, show active, engaged listening, right? When we are listening actively, we are fully focused and engaged on the listener instead of thinking about what we're going to say, which guess what? Causes us stress, right? When we are thinking about ourselves and we're consumed in our thoughts, we are going to be more stressed and we're going to have more performance anxiety and we're going to perform worse than if we don't concentrate on ourselves too much, but rather focus on the listener, focus on the speakers, focus on what the other person has to say, and actively engage by listening. And you can paraphrase. This is a great technique and tool. So you repeat what others say in your own words so that you can confirm understanding, and then always respond as thoughtfully as you can, right? That's interesting. Or can you tell me more about that? Or wow, I really am fascinated by that experience. I would love to learn more. Strategy number 3, expand with because, right? So you're elaborating, you're giving examples. A weak yes or I agree is something that we want to avoid, right? Those are going to lead to kind of like the end of the conversation, which is not what the goal is, right? We want to continue the conversation in English and be keeping the conversation going. So you don't want to have a single word answer, which is why with strategy number 1, we talked about these open-ended questions, which are really, truly fantastic. So if you answer with a yes or a no, then add a because, right? Adding reasons will extend your response and you'll be able to elaborate more. And then they'll be able to ask you questions. And then you have a nice conversation, a back and forth. The best thing to do is to add some personal examples. Put in a little storytelling. Sprinkle in some anecdotes, right? I enjoy traveling because it helps me learn about new cultures. In fact, I was just in India and I learned this and this and this and this, right? So you talk about what you learned. All right. Strategy number 4, leverage fillers and connectors. So a lot of times people say fillers are bad. You should avoid fillers, meaning those kind of discourse markers in conversation and those places where instead of a pause, we fill it with an or a like or a or a well or a so. But they're not always bad, okay? They're not always bad. In fact, they can be when used strategically, they can be a great tool. So you can buy some time with fillers that are natural, right? You don't want to overdo it, obviously. Well, that's a great question. Well, let me think about that. That's an excellent point. I hadn't thought about it, right? It gives you some thinking time, okay, in a natural way. And then you can always use connecting phrases. And then, but also, on the other hand, however, okay, these are great as well. So I want you to use them. And then, of course, the pro level step would be to bridge your ideas together. So that reminds me of a time when, or speaking of, or circling back to an earlier point, or, you said something earlier that I'd like to address, or that's similar to, okay, these are pro moves right here. All right, strategy number 5, I want you to talk about shared topics of interest. So maybe food and restaurants, right? Maybe you're a foodie. Maybe you have a side hustle where you do a food blog, right? Whatever it is, you can talk about food and restaurants. This place has amazing coffee, doesn't it? Or I just found a bubble tea place that I really like. If you're interested, we can go together. I really like bubble tea and I think you do too. Work and studies, right? What projects are you working on these days? Tell me about that. You can talk about your interests, your hobbies. Have you seen any good movies lately? Are you streaming anything interesting on Netflix? And then maybe some local events in your area. Did you hear about the festival happening this weekend? I hear there's a Renaissance fair coming up. I would love to check it out. Okay, so these topics of shared interest really are great because they introduce this idea of common ground, which we really want to run with because what they end up doing is they show similarities. And the more similarities you find with each other, the more rapport you're going to naturally start to create. And the stronger the rapport, the stronger the connection, the easier you'll have with actually having the conversation and keeping it going. Okay, so what do you do when it feels awkward? So let's troubleshoot here. I'm going to give you 3 things that you can think about. So the first thing is acknowledge it, okay? Just point out the elephant in the room. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. You know what? You don't even have to say you're sorry. You don't have to be sorry about that, right? You can just say, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? And just kind of acknowledge it, say it with a smile, or you can even say, English isn't my first language, but I'm really enjoying our conversation. Ask for clarification. Okay. If you feel stuck or you feel like you're lost or you don't know what's happening, pause a minute and ask for the person to clarify. could you explain that to me in a different way? Or, I'm not familiar with that expression. Do you mind shedding some light on that? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. What would be worse is if you had just let the person continue talking and then you're completely lost, completely, confused. And then there's not going to really be a good conversation there. So pause, ask for clarification, and then pivot gracefully. You can always do a topic switch. So, that reminds me of blah, 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 and then talk about something that you're more comfortable and confident talking about. Or speaking of travel, have you ever tried a language exchange? Right? So speaking of that thing, let's talk about this instead, but they're somehow related, right? Travel, language, you can absolutely pivot to that. You wouldn't want to use speaking of and then make it completely different, right? So speaking of travel, have you seen the new movie on card games, right? Those two are those are disparate things, different things. So you really want to make it obvious. There's a connection there. Okay. That's the biggest thing with this speaking of phraseology. Okay. So you can certainly practice these in our community when you come and join us. We have a section for members where we have a community section and you get to talk to each other. You get to do your own video calls as well, as frequently and as often as you would like. That's available to our members in Explearning Academy. You can also just practice these role-playing sessions with, a friend, for example. So find a partner, or like I said, if you're in the community, just find one of the members in our community. Everyone's really welcoming and kind and lovely. So very easy to do that, to connect with people in our community. Select a conversation prompt. So use something like topics of interest, weekend plans, vacation ideas, travel dreams, and then apply the strategies that I gave you in this class, right? Practice some open questions, implement active listening, expand on your answers, use because, add those fillers strategically, and then give some feedback to each other, right? What worked well? What do you think could have gone differently? What did you like to, what kind of strategy did you really find helped you? What strategy do you feel like you need more work on? How can you improve next time, right? We're always works in progress, all of us. Okay, so fluency and confidence, right? This is really important. We talk a lot about social fluency. This is going to help strengthen your language skills, your communication skills, your personal connections at work, and also in life. You also want to be sure to practice as consistently as you can. Get into a routine. In our Explearning Academy, we make it very easy with daily tasks, daily quests. And then, of course, we have our live sessions and we have our self-study program. So it's very much plug and play. All you have to do is show up. We have a wonderful app that you can use right on your phone. Super easy and a lot of fun, like I said. So consistency is key, my friends. And then, of course, thinking about your core skills, right? Listening, questioning, expanding, and elaborating on answers. These are all going to get you closer to your goal of being able to continue a conversation in English with poise, with confidence, with grace, and then really achieving that social fluency that you so crave and so desire. And with practice, it's going to be super easy and it's going to become second nature to you. You're going to exude confidence. People are going to notice that and they're going to say, wow, I want to speak like them. I want to have these kinds of conversation skills and reach that social fluency myself. So these are all great things. Again, be sure to practice. Don't be hard on yourself, right? We're all works in progress. We all have things we can improve, but don't forget to celebrate your milestones as well, right? Be happy with where you are, but also with where you're going, and keep it up. I'm really proud of the work that you're putting in. The fact that you came and joined this session and watched this session replay, that's testament to your hard work and your wanting to improve even more. All right, my friends, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.